What if the best self-help book ever written wasn't published last year by some influencer? What if it was a collection of letters written by a Roman philosopher to his friend nearly 2,000 years ago? And what if it contained more practical, tested, honest wisdom than every modern productivity guru combined? The book is called Letters from a Stoic. The author is Seneca. And once you read it, you'll wonder why you ever spent money on self-help again. To understand the letters, you need to understand who they were written to. His name was Lucilius. He was a Roman procurator stationed in Sicily, a government official, a man of wealth and ambition, and he was Seneca's friend. Around 63 AD, when Seneca was in his late 60s and nearing the end of his life, he began writing Lucilius a series of letters, not formal essays, not public speeches, private correspondence, friend to friend, mentor to student. One human being trying to help another figure out how to live. The letters are intimate in a way that almost nothing else from antiquity is. Seneca writes about his morning routine, his afternoon walk, his struggles with illness, his fear of death. He complains about crowds, about noise in his apartment, about the absurdity of arena spectacles. He's funny, he's self-deprecating. He contradicts himself and then catches the contradiction. There are 124 letters that survive. Together, they form the most complete record of one person's attempt to live philosophically that the ancient world ever produced. They're not polished treatises. They're the working notes of a man trying to practice what he preaches. And that honesty is exactly what makes them more useful than anything on the bestseller shelf today. The very first letter sets the tone for everything that follows. Seneca opens by telling Lucilius to protect his time like his life depends on it. Because it does, he writes that we are generous with our money but wasteful with our hours. We guard our property but hand our time to anyone who asks for it. And the tragedy is that time is the one thing you can never get back. You can earn more money. You can rebuild a reputation. You cannot recover a wasted Tuesday. If you've watched the earlier video on Seneca's on the shortness of life, this theme will be familiar. But letter one hits differently because of the format. He's not writing a philosophical essay. He's writing to his friend. The urgency is personal. He's saying, Lucilius, I care about you, and I can see you're giving your life away to things that don't deserve it. Stop. That directness, that personal investment, is what separates these letters from self-help books that speak to everyone and therefore speak to no one. Seneca was writing to one person. And that's exactly why it feels like he's writing to you. Letter 13 is the letter I recommend most to people dealing with anxiety. Seneca writes to Lucilius about the habit of suffering in advance, of living through terrible events that haven't happened yet and probably never will. He tells Lucilius, there are more things likely to frighten us than there are to crush us. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. That line alone is worth more than most therapy sessions, not because therapy isn't valuable, but because the insight is so clean, so precise that it cuts through the noise instantly. Seneca then walks Lucilius through a practical analysis. He asks, is the thing you fear happening right now? If not, why are you living as though it is? And if it does happen, will it be as bad as your imagination insists? Almost never. The imagined version is always worse, because imagination has no limits, no context, no proportion. It takes a possibility and inflates it into a certainty. What's remarkable is how closely this mirrors modern CBT techniques. The process of identifying catastrophic thinking, questioning its accuracy, and replacing it with a more realistic assessment is exactly what Seneca prescribes in this letter. 2,000 years before it was clinically validated. This is the letter that surprises people most. Seneca, a wealthy Roman living in a slave-owning society, writes a letter arguing that slaves are fully human and should be treated with dignity. He tells Lucilius they are slaves, people say, No, they are human beings. They are slaves. No, they are fellow inhabitants. They are slaves. No, they are humble friends. In a culture where slaves were considered property, this was radical. Seneca argued that the only difference between a master and a slave is fortune. Today you give orders. Tomorrow you could be the one in chains. The position is an accident of birth, not a measure of worth. He urged Lucilius to eat with his slaves, to talk with them, to remember that the person serving your food has the same capacity for thought, suffering, and virtue that you do. It would be easy to dismiss this as hollow words from a man who owned slaves himself, and that's a fair criticism. But the fact that Seneca could see past his own culture's deepest assumptions, even imperfectly, and articulate an ethical position that wouldn't become mainstream for another 18 centuries, says something about what these letters are capable of. They don't just challenge the reader, they challenge the writer. Letter 78 is written to Lucilius during a period of illness. Seneca, himself frequently unwell, addresses the question of how to endure physical pain without losing your dignity or your mind. His advice is layered. First, he says, don't add mental suffering to physical suffering. The body hurts. That's real. But the stories you tell about the pain, how long will this last? What if it gets worse? What if I never recover? Those stories add a second layer of suffering that is entirely self-inflicted. Strip the stories away and deal only with the sensation. Second, he reminds Lucilius that pain has a natural limit. It either ends or you adapt to it. No pain remains at peak intensity forever. This is a fact the anxious mind refuses to believe, but Seneca insists on it because experience confirms it. Third, and most powerfully, he says that illness can be a teacher. It strips away distraction and forces you to confront what actually matters. Healthy people take their lives for granted. Sick people suddenly understand the value of a single painless hour. That understanding, born from suffering, is a kind of wisdom that comfort can never provide. So why read a collection of 2,000-year-old letters when there are thousands of new self-help books published every year? Because modern self-help has a problem. It hasn't been tested. A book published last year has 1 year of reader feedback. It has marketing, endorsements, and a bestseller badge. What it doesn't have is proof that any of it works over a lifetime. It hasn't survived a war. It hasn't survived a plague. It hasn't survived 20 centuries of human beings in crisis reaching for something useful. Seneca's letters have survived all of those things. People have been reading them in exile, in prison, in illness, in grief, and in the ordinary quiet desperation of a life that feels like it's slipping away. And they keep reading them because they keep working. Modern self-help tells you what to do. Seneca shows you what he did, admits where he failed, and asks you to figure out the rest alongside him. That's not a guru lecturing from a stage. That's a friend writing by candlelight. And that difference is why these letters are still here. Here's your challenge. Pick one Seneca letter and read it this week. If you've never read any, start with letter 1 or letter 13. Both are available free online and take less than 10 minutes. Read it slowly, not like content, like a letter addressed to you. Because in every way that matters, it is. Then write a 1-paragraph response as if you were Lucilius writing back. Tell Seneca what you agree with, what you resist, and what you plan to do about it. That conversation between you and a man who died 2,000 years ago will teach you more about yourself than you expect. The best self-help book ever written wasn't designed to sell copies. It was designed to help one friend live a better life. And the fact that it still works on you right now says everything about what Seneca understood about the human condition. No man was ever wise by chance. If this changed how you think about where real wisdom comes from, subscribe for more ancient wisdom that still works today. Drop a comment telling me which Seneca letter you're going to start with. I read every single one.